All right, so welcome into our live stream today. We are going to dive into the metaverse and really get in deep, I think, with what's happening in the OMIverse and also in the VeVeverse, how all of this is tied together, what this might mean to you, whether you're invested in tokens or whether you are a collector and looking at digital asset growth for 2022. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to TechPath. Let's get into it today. And of course, on these shows, we like to dive in a lot into kind of where not only where some of the trends are leading us, but also behind the scenes. So what's happening really within the ecosystem, within the economy, and also within the community. Today, joining me, of course, is Kyle Willson. He's been on the show before. He is a VeVe YouTuber, and great to have you back on the show, Kyle.
Hey, Paul, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and it's great to be back.
Excellent. I follow your Twitter feed. If you guys have not followed Kyle, you got to get out there and get with him. We'll leave a link in the description below for sure, and over to his YouTube channel as well. But one thing, Kyle, I want to get into, and that is when you look at just VeVe in general, with all the moves that have been made over the past, say, really 90 days. What are your thoughts right now in terms of their strategy? Do you feel like the rollout has been somewhat on time? What are your thoughts before we get into the migration issue?
Yeah, I think the past, 90 days, there's been maybe some unseen delays or, delays that maybe they didn't have planned. And so I think there has been a couple delays, but as far as the past 90 days, I would say it's been pretty successful as far as, moving forward, getting listed on IMX and having that integration, rolling out as so.
Yeah, so OMI does the completion right now. I was over on their Twitter. The in-app migration of OMI is now complete. This is just, let me zoom in on that a little bit. Here's what you need to know. Any OMI in the VeVe app is now on layer 2. This means you can only send it to other layer 2 wallets. Any transactions attempting to send it into layer 1 will fail. So that's something to keep in there. And then, of course, we'll keep you updated when the bridge is open. And in the meantime, we want to extend a huge thank to everybody for the patience. Of course, a lot of excitement around this, and a new era has begun. So that's a cool thing. What are some of the benefits for this migration to occur? What do you think are going to be some of the takeaways that not only the people who are really big fans of VeVe, but in general, how this is going to affect OMI?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of, macro NFT, utilities that are added in where people that have, Ethereum, they can bridge it to, Immutable X, and they can basically, be ported right into that Immutable X ecosystem. And OMI, having the OMI token on Immutable X is huge because now you can sell your NFTs into OMI and then vice versa, right? So it provides a lot more utility there. And now OMI can say that these are, minted on the Ethereum blockchain. So it's very important for, some of the people that are, maybe, like to refer to these as, NFTs based on a certain blockchain like Ethereum. There's a lot of, Ethereum maxis out there. So I think this is going to drive a lot of excitement there, but also like, as you mentioned, utility side where people can sell their NFTs into OMI. And I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah, I think, and you're right. I think the scenario we see a lot with NFTs is Ethereum has kind of been one of the provenance, chains out there in terms of quality. Also, obviously, marketplace access, gas fees a little bit on the high side. But other than that, we've seen Ethereum obviously become really the 800-pound gorilla in the marketplace. They also went on to say on their Twitter feed, it says OMI tokens being migrated on exchanges will be swapped to layer 1. And this means you can withdraw from exchanges to your own ERC20, so that's Ethereum wallets. However, you can't deposit directly to your VeVe official OMI wallet right now. So with that being the case, do you think that's just a matter of time before we actually see that transition occur?
Yeah, so I believe they'll have the bridge side up pretty soon, and it'll be as simple as sending your layer 1 OMI to layer 2 and vice versa. So it's very similar to what's already available on Immutable X with the layer 1 Ethereum. So, if you used Immutable X before, you just send over your layer 1 Ethereum to the Immutable X exchange, and there's a little bit of a fee there, but it just bridges that layer 1 Ethereum to the layer 2 Ethereum. So I believe we'll have something very similar very soon from the OMI team officially as
Right.
far as the bridge goes.
Yeah, big news for sure. I was looking at the data. Let me pull up the VeVe. We had a slide that we just put together on this. This is just on VeVe. So we track sentiment data on different projects. Obviously, VeVe not a token being traded, but definitely a project in the NFT and collectible space. And we do look at it. We look at a couple of factors there. One is sentiment and then amplification. Sentiment up from December, which December was 69.73 on sentiment, and it's jumped almost nine points to 78.61. That is as of this morning when all this news was hitting to 78.61. But what's more important is the amplification that we monitor, which is usually telling us the popularity of something as it starts to move. It's doing what we call a flip, which is 79.63. It's higher than the sentiment score. With that being the case, do you think we're going to see some new adoption into VeVe now that people kind of see the migration path happening, the potential writing is on the wall?
Yeah, I think so. Both from not only the NFT side, but from mainstream adoption as well. So I think we're going to see those two combinations come together and really take it to the next level. Your 2x, 5x, more massive adoption. So you'll see, influencers that are primarily based on Ethereum, or I believe we'll see them give VeVe more of a shout out, quote unquote. And
Right.
from the mainstream media, we're already seeing huge influencers and celebrities already start mentioning VeVe almost on a daily or weekly basis now. So we're definitely going to see their followers as well come into the app, find out what VeVe is all about, and start collecting NFTs as well. So
I was following the VeVe thread here on Twitter, and of course they retweeted a couple hours ago, obviously the same tweet that OMI put out. So I like the fact that, I think when we see the potential here, especially, I'm a VeVe user, I'm a collector, I'm starting to get more and more into collecting and really understanding kind of not only the fun side of it, but also the metrics behind this. But I think VeVe does a good job in essence of trying to put the roadmap out there for not only the enthusiasts, but also the market for the newbies that are coming in and really understanding. Because a lot of, now I'm seeing, like, my kids now are really big into wanting to go in and kind of participate in the drops or look in the marketplace. They're starting to understand a little bit more about money too, so, and how that all works. Yeah. But when you look at the VeVe strategy overall, especially from the drop side, there's been a ton of those. We've got the Mickey drop coming up this weekend. Talk to me about what you think overall and how the drops have been performing. What are your thoughts on whether or not this is going to be easily adopted, especially with some of these drops that are very difficult to get to?
Yeah, so I think they'll continue to remain difficult just from the sheer amount of users. Everybody's competing for such a limited number of editions or collectibles on the app. So I don't see that getting any easier unless, as time goes on, they have the Master Collectors program, which is, if you have a certain amount of sets or collectibles, you get these daily accrued points. I think there's going to be some benefits to those that are, having high level of Master Collectors points on there. So that's definitely one strategy to look at. But for, if you're just brand new coming to the app, participating in drops is going to be a must, but the difficult level is still going to be pretty high, just like I mentioned earlier, the sheer amount of users on the app competing for the specific drop. But the drop performance has been, the drops itself, the app performing a lot better than it has in the past. So just happy to see that, consistency, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's been a thing that with any good app that gets a lot of hits on it in terms of just users really pounding the system at the time, especially with their strategy on these, specific timing drops. And then you've got the scenario of what type they are, just like the one that's dropping tomorrow. I was just going to jump to the VeVe app right now. And you've got Mickey and Friends dropping tomorrow, the 29th, obviously 11 a.m. So within that, and of course, I'm on an iOS device. We're porting over my iPad for this. But in addition to this, with one thing that I have noticed with some of our guys that are in our crypto pit that have talked about this, because the OMI wallet is actually already showing up in the Android app, but not necessarily in the iOS app yet. What are your thoughts on how that might actually come together?
Yeah, so they're still working on the MTL, and I believe they're in a beta phase of that. So hopefully, we'll see that launch fully soon this year. And I think as far as the iOS app, I think there's probably Apple has there's some restrictions or
Hmm.
there's some things that they have to navigate on the back end for that to go live. But I wouldn't expect to see that. I would expect to see a web application and they already do have the web wallet available as well. I think they're going to continue to do that. They're going to continue to roll out, hopefully, eventually the actual web application fully to where you can, build your vaults and look at your collections online. I think that's kind of the move that they're going after. As you know,
Hmm.
with Apple having, 30% fees on most app developers, I think that's a pretty steep price there. So
Right.
in terms of that, it could go one way or the other, but I don't expect them to have that available soon on the iOS app. I would much, expected to see more, promotion from the web application itself if they roll that out this year.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What are some of the drops that you're getting really excited about? We've got, Mickey and Friends coming up this week. We've got, I think, the Elektra first appearance of Elektra and Daredevil coming up later.
Mhm.
What other drops are you really looking at down the line here?
Yeah, yeah. So the Disney and Friends, that's gonna be pretty cool. First editions there. Really excited about that. I think they're gonna play music and things, so that's gonna be very interesting. And I like that. I like the Marvel Mighties and
Yeah.
kind of the Spider-Verse characters, and I think that's huge, especially for the younger crowd, younger demographic. And I think there's already a show on Disney Plus about uh, the Spider Verse, and
Hmm.
Friends or whatever. But I'm pretty excited about that, and there's a lot of first appearances, I believe, in that collection as well. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that, and hopefully, like as you mentioned earlier in the episode and previous, more brands that hopefully will be announced, this year would be pretty exciting too.
Yeah, I think we are going to see a big year for VeVe, just in terms of those brand partnerships overall. And I'm kind of curious, when you are going about the process for drops, I think everybody kind of has their own little, you know, way of doing, preparing for a drop and then actually trying to get one. I'm kind of curious, have you found any additional tricks or any additional tools that you can use to potentially better your odds on trying to get one of these?
Yeah, I think it's just as simple as just getting your timing perfect. My favorite one is what they call rhythm gate, where you just count down from 10 and just make sure you're synced up mentally with the actual timer on the screen. And that's done me a lot of success. And,
Ah,
there's a lot of
okay.
tricks out there, but I think that one I've benefited from the most. I think
Interesting.
so.
Yeah, very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
What do you think about aftermarket? Because I've bought a few
Mhm.
collectibles in the aftermarket, some of which just because I like them and I look more of a long-term hold. I'm not necessarily a flipper. But when you look at aftermarket, do you see there's some value still in the aftermarket marketplace?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a safer place to interact on the app, of course, the marketplace. But yeah, I believe that you can definitely pick up some undervalued assets still on the marketplace. And as time goes on, there's going to be more and more brands and drops. But there's only going to be those limited amount of blue chips and grails, from the earlier drops. So when you look at it in terms of that, I would be, looking at opportunities. When they do announce a big brand, it may or may not cause a dip. And if it does dip, then that could be a good opportunity to buy in for a lower price while everybody's hyped up on that new brand announcement. And there's always good plays like that. And I think there's always going to continue to be that. And yeah, as long as you're on the app and participating in looking at the market, every day or once a week, I think there's definitely some good deals available still.
I'm kind of curious I was just looking at Invisible Woman, for example, because that's one I've been trying to get to. Are there any
Mhm.
values that, or if you were looking at trying to give somebody that is maybe new to collecting and said, hey, you should maybe try to pick one of these up or a couple of these
Mhm.
particular items, what would you give as advice on these are the things I like? Maybe you might like them as well.
Yeah, I look for the historical value often associated with some of these characters. First appearances, first editions are always huge in
Hmm.
the collecting world. You know, as you see behind me, there's I got one of the comics, and that's associated with the the actual artist. You know, Todd McFarlane, who owns an actual business and Image Comics, and he does a lot of different work. And I think he actually runs like DC Direct now, basically for DC on the physical side. So some of these collectibles will have intrinsic value, or as far as like historical value, I mean. And I think it's important to kind of look for those and see both on the comic side and collectible side which are of these comics and collectibles or have historical meaning or significance. That's always big. And always collect what you like, so if
Yeah.
you're keen on the Batman characters, or you're keen on, Marvel and Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse, you can collect what you like there. You're probably going to know a little bit more information anyways when it comes to those characters or collectibles that you like as well. And even art, there's more art coming down the road that some people that know about the art side a little bit more may,
Hmm.
so anyways, at the end of the day, just collect what you like. And those lower mint numbers are always nice too. If you can find some low mints for an affordable price, those are always good snipes too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's what I've been looking for is the lower mint numbers
Mhm.
in things that I might look at. I didn't realize that VeVe was putting together programs and partnerships with potential artists. That would be a big part of this. I mean, especially if we get into any kind of really collectible art, that would be a huge thing. What are some of?
Mhm.
How long do you think that we'll see that before we'll see that in the app itself?
Yeah, so I believe we've seen some iterations in the beginning phases where Givenchy, launched their art and rewind collection.
Right.
And then, of course, Designer Con, where there's also, art there as well. But I think we'll continue to see that. I think we're going to get bigger and bigger artists and names into the app. And I think that's going to be a big component. And I believe they dubbed it Artist Alley. And I think they're going
Hmm.
to only continue to build upon that and the success of that and how that's been.
That's going to be cool. I like that one.
Mhm.
All right, so you think about mainstream adoption. NFTs are really starting to, I think, become at least a little bit more recognizable from mainstream, with the fact that we've seen the kind of the connection between OMI. Eventually, we'll see the connection between gems and which is the in-app economy for buying these collectibles. And of
Mm.
course, the cool thing is the easy on ramp from a fiat side is such a beautiful thing with VeVe. And I think a lot of people from mass adoption side really like that. But eventually, you're going to want to sell those things. Sell that NFT,
Mhm.
trade it, whatever it might be. So that is where the value of the OMI ecosystem, and of course IMX and what's happening with Immutable is really going to be a big factor. Do you think this is a big win for mass adoption, especially in collectibles, for what's happening right now with VeVe and OMI?
Yeah. I think that VeVe is definitely leading the way in adoption, and I think people are taking notice and seeing this and
Yeah,
seeing the success of how this app has been, and I think that's definitely going to drive a lot of other projects, even on
yeah,
OpenSea. So I think it definitely benefits the entire ecosystem for sure.
yeah. So you like it? You're bullish on the idea of mainstream adoption into NFTs, especially in the collectible side of things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that as we've seen crypto kind of you know build a mainstream adoption. We've seen it on like the World Series, and it's on F1, and we're
Hmm.
seeing, crypto.com and all these different brands on all these, mainstream outlets and commercials. Even I think that NFTs being even bear resistant on a down crypto market, I think that's huge. And I think people are realizing that collectibles can be a good store of value. So I
Yep.
think that for me is definitely bullish thing to consider for sure.
Yeah, and I think as people, you're watching our channel today, guys, you understand if you're investing in collectibles or in crypto in general, the market has been a little sideways on crypto. This is where NFTs, play to earn gaming, the metaverse really starts to play into this because there's a definite amount of new value that's being generated, especially in these early adoption phases that we're going through right now on like what we're seeing with VeVe. And I think this is going to open up some very interesting aspects for long-term investment of going into some of these strategies like this. I want to talk to you about, Kyle, about Disney golden moments and kind of what happened with Disney in that particular scenario. We saw a licensing versus promotional deal that just came out. There was a video that I want to cut to that it was one of their former executives that was talking about this strategy, and that it was actually not, well, just listen to the video. You'll understand what I'm talking about here. Let's go.
I don't like this deal that they've done with VeVe because it feels like Disney's very first step into blockchain. The superlative of first is very valuable and important. Think back to the Beeple auction at Christie's earlier last year. Part of that price of $65 million was built around the superlative, the first NFTs sold at Christie's. These were the very first NFTs of Mickey Mouse and Star Wars characters sold on the blockchain, and they're essentially Happy Meals. Someone at Disney screwed up by making this deal. They were pushing a schlocky, and I'll be very honest, it's a schlocky promotion that was meant to push Disney Plus subscriptions. And no one ever thought about what was that superlative value of the first Disney Mickey Mouse NFT. And in my opinion, they left millions of dollars of value on the table. And what I'd say is, for anyone who collected these golden moments NFTs, hold them, or hodl them, I guess as the kids say nowadays. Hold them, because Disney's mistake is going to be a huge value gain for you in the long term. That's not financial advice, by the way. But hold those, because when the mainstream Disney collectors start coming into the space, they're going to be looking for those first Mickey Mouse NFTs, and they happen to have been these golden moments projects.
All right, so a perfect example of that video kind of explaining Disney's faux pas, so to speak, of offering this out as a promotional device, and he had referenced the Happy Meal angle of it. So it sounds like if you got in on a golden moment, you're setting pretty right now in terms of value. Do you think Disney, though, is going to change up their strategy in how they're rolling out these? I can't imagine they wouldn't, but I wanted your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think they will. I think that they'll continue to do what they're doing. And, you know, if they do change anything up, I think maybe they'll add in definitely some quote unquote utility or promotions to it. I could definitely see them doing that, because that's just a typical thing we're seeing in the NFT space is these NFT projects adding utility to their NFTs. And these brands and IP owners like Disney, they're taking notice, and I think it's very smart for them to add in quote unquote promotions. But, you know, if you're from the NFT space, we just look at that as a utility and we get excited about that. But I think they'll continue to do what they're doing and add in, you know, additional promotions or utilities for sure.
Yeah. I want to jump to the chart. So I would agree with you. I think the scenario is that Disney's strategy is going to be, I think, multifold with how they're going about, you know, promoting out into this, and also other, you know, other platforms that eventually will develop. Before we get into one of the charts, I want to ask you, Kyle, is there anyone out there in the space right now that you're researching that you think is potentially, maybe not necessarily a competitor to OMI, but at least a complementary, you know, project that could help elevate the whole game?
There's a couple of them I'm keeping an eye on. Eternity is one of them that I have kind of my eye on. Just they have it looks like they have maybe their own niche over there, or niche on sports and things like that. And then Recur is one that's I've heard mentioned before. I've actually had a couple passes on that. They look a ways out before they might roll anything out. So it may be a while before we see anything from Recur, but no, VeVe is definitely the biggest platform that I know of and that I've seen out there that's definitely leading the sector. And so, especially when it comes to brands, obviously, but I don't see a platform out there that's on that level yet. But there's some definitely up and coming platforms out there for sure, though.
Yeah, for right now, I feel like OMI is pretty much the market leader. It's kind of like what Axie Infinity has done in Play to Earn. Just they're so far separated from most of the project, just because they're rolling out and it's actually an economy that's actually got a community that's very vibrant, and there's, you can get stuff done on it. So in terms of collectibles, so it's definitely a big one. Let's jump over here to the chart. I want to just give everybody, because I know you guys are all wondering, well, hey, how's the OMI token doing? And if you look back here on January 10th, OMI's token was holding a sentiment at 70.92 and a 68.38, which was soft mainly because the market was a bit soft. But also when you look right here on January 24th, after we had seen some downturn, again, because of what has happened in the rest of the crypto markets, OMI actually recovered on sentiment to 72.09 and an amplification score of 71.77. And then, of course, you see that movement up that we're experiencing right now. So not a bad movement for where OMI is trading right now at 007. So very interesting. So we're going to continue to track OMI as a token. We do this all the time on the channel. As you guys know, we cover this through our CPI, which is our Crypto Power Index. Additionally, I wanted to show you IMX, because this is the other one that almost in unison went up when we started to see this migration. I think IMX, just by sheer involvement with what's happening with VeVe, is probably seeing a little bit of that tolerance there. But also 71.29, and then moving up to 72.04 right here on the 24th, same day. And again, I think that was a little bit of a pent-up demand for what we saw with the the convergence of the OMI token. So very impressed. And of course, if you guys have not seen the IMX marketplace, you got to check out Immutable X, because this is a great, again, just another way and more integration with how VeVe is really, I think, putting together a very big powerhouse play here for sure. All right, so we're going to try to, Kyle, we're going to take some questions. Are you up for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Before we go to the questions, though, I want to jump to the poll, because this was interesting right here. Let's review that. Do you currently hold OMI tokens right now? Some yes, 51% no. When it's more available, people are right now just a little bit of not interested. That's great. 97% of people are like, hey, we got to try to do something here to get to it. But I think that's the challenge with OMI, as you know, is just being able to get to that token right there. Let's jump to the questions. And this is interesting. Let's look at, Disney doesn't have an infrastructure to drop NFTs at this time. And if you look at what their deal was with OMI, the executive was talking about it, the former Disney executive was talking about kind of some of the structures that were put in place with Disney. What are your thoughts on, could Disney at one point try to do this on their own?
Yeah, I think they definitely could, but I don't know if we'll see anything from them anytime soon. I say that because with the NFT, as far as mainstream adoption, there's still a lot of education that needs to be had for the average, user, or even just the thought of buying an NFT and what that means for somebody. And so it may be a while before we see Disney actually roll anything out. So I think they'll continue to roll out drops on VeVe, and so yeah, I think they could, but will they? Time will tell, and it'll probably be a while. So
yeah, and I think B-Boy Ajax says Disney can still make money selling NFTs to get into the park. There's going to be some other aspects of how Disney will incorporate NFTs. And I think that's going to be another play with Disney. Listen, Disney has such a a powerhouse library of just irrefutable, unbelievable assets. Applying that to the blockchain space, digital, and of course what we'll see in NFT collectibles, I think is going to just be a no-brainer for sure. Is there anything that Disney is doing right now that you're kind of leaning into, saying, "Wow, this could really be something that could find its way into the VeVe marketplace soon"?
They've been really strategic, it seems, at least on the Marvel side. So I've been paying close attention to that, and it's something to definitely pay attention to on the Disney side. Disney animations, the movies that they're launching, or that they've currently launched, like Encanto, where we could possibly see some of those characters come to the app. And I think that's a great move for Disney, and really builds their promotion. I think that's a super popular movie, and they have a lot to do with that. So I think we'll continue to see that strategy play out on the Disney animation and Disney side. So,
yeah, that's a good question here. Has ship sailed for VeVe and OMI, or still a lot of upside left? Because you look at tokens, a lot of times people will say, "Hey, I want to get it when it's at the absolute earliest before the bounce." But we're continuing to see advancements both on OMI, primarily because of the VeVe success. I don't think the ship has sailed on VeVe because the collectability market is just going to continue to explode. But from an OMI aspect, I feel like it is also equally on the upside. I don't know that you go wrong either way. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think, as you mentioned earlier, it's a little bit harder to get and acquire OMI, and for that reason, I think that's why it hasn't really just 2x'd in the short term. But I think there's a lot of potential and upside there, and just the way their tokenomics work, it just looks like a great, all that there could be is good upside potential. So, yeah, I agree 100% that that both sides have a lot of potential.
This is an interesting statement here from Three Natural. OMI went from a local to a global when they did the ERC 20, migration, which we're talking about today. Now Disney can release their catalog with marketing behind it, with IMX and support, and then of course traffic as opposed to Go, which was the old model. So this could be, yeah, all this I think is flowing into the overall strategy. Your thoughts on kind of how this will affect Disney collectors in general? I'm just kind of curious. Do you think this is a huge onslaught of people finally coming in and saying, no, I'm going to go to NFT Disney collections again?
Yeah, I don't know if that would be particularly a catalyst there. I think Disney collectors are just going to find more and more about VeVe as, word of mouth, people telling each other, I think that's going to be more the move. And, OMI moving to an ERC 20 based on Ethereum, I think that's just good for, people that are, Ethereum maxis, for instance. I think that's
Yeah,
going
for
to
sure.
drive them definitely more so on the VeVe app. And I've been seeing it on Twitter a lot. I've seen a lot of Bored Ape owners, like more and more of our posts. So, yeah, I definitely see that as a benefit on that side.
Yeah, I mean, we're tracking this data pretty heavily, and it's one of those things that, when we look at sentiment data, which helps drive price action a lot of times within the market, we look at those kind of scenarios, which are what we call amplification. And just to your point, where you start to see some of these maxis or other, influencers that start to move in that space, and then all of a sudden you have something that's moving up the charts, so to speak, like an OMI, the token, which is only going to make it more aware to the common person that maybe is just getting into NFTs for the first time, which I think will have a lot of new exploration of just general, retail consumers and investors coming into NFTs this year, just because they've seen, all right, there's been a bloodbath over in the crypto altcoins, and I'm going to do a little DeFi, and I'm going to park some USDC, but where can I go and look at long-term value gain? And that's where collectibles can really be a big part of that. All right, a couple other questions here. Thanks for the super chat there from Kobe. Drops sell out in a split second. Burn rates are already amazing. Millions burned daily. 1 million plus per week. Added utility in development. Lots of good stuff here. Expect 100x for a variety of reasons. Could it be number one? I don't know that I would say. First of all, we've got it OMI. If you're looking at OMI in general, that token has to become much more available. Now, eventually, it's going to get listed on a lot more places. It's just a natural evolution of projects like this. Your thoughts on how much impact that would have on OMI the token if it were to get listed just on maybe a mid-market exchange versus what you have to do now to go find it?
Yeah, so what I've seen, at least in the short term here, is that mid-level exchange is definitely a boost in liquidity and maybe more access to users that use that specific exchange. So I definitely expect as more exchanges get added, there's obviously going to be a boost in price every exchange added, and that's going to offer more liquidity, obviously, as well. So I think definitely with a mid-tier exchange, it'll definitely get a boost. I mean, each exchange has, their own users. I know a lot of people have different exchange accounts, but the more access that everybody has, the better. And more wallets is always better. When you have more access to people's wallets and more places to exchange OMI on, that definitely gets a boost. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Is there a burn mechanism with OMI right now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
How does that work, Kyle?
Yeah, so every time they do a drop, a certain percentage of the drop gets burnt in the OMI token. So which right now every drop sells out. So
Yeah.
pretty much every drop is burning OMI token. And also in the marketplace, every time somebody buys a collectible, there's OMI burnt in that transaction as well. So there's those two burn mechanisms, and the future burn mechanisms that have yet to be released as well. So
Yeah, I think that's going to be a cool one to hit. All right, so you look at 2 or 3 things that VeVe needs to do for 2022 in terms of a roadmap or a strategy plan. What would those 2 or 3 things be?
Strategy or roadmap would just, obviously exchange listings. That's always a phenomenal thing to do when you're a project and you don't have, a ton of exchanges yet. I think they'll continue to do that, obviously, and that will probably be a thing that will roll out in the short term. The web application allowing PC users to, use the OMI app on your computer. I think that's obviously a great strategy for at least on the enjoyment and collectible side. But also maybe we can buy and sell and trade NFTs on our PC as well. I think that's also a great move to do as well. And the third one, I would say that one's nothing comes to mind, at this current second, but those would be probably my big 2. And as well as, I think that's basically it. That's all I can think of right now.
All right. So for you guys, thank you again for jumping in on the live stream today. Of course, as you guys know, if you're listening over the podcast right now, we do these kinds of draw-ins. Often we'll do analysis, but you got to come over here to the YouTube channel. It is definitely the place to get involved, because if you just search Paul Barron Network, you'll find us. You can get into the Diamond Circle, which is our own private member group. We drop a ton of both research, insights, all that good stuff to you guys as well. And that's free. You can just hit the links below. Make sure and go to Kyle Willson's YouTube channel. Let me show it to you right here. I'm going to bring it up on I'm going to get you some subs here, Kyle, because I think
all right, appreciate it.
You are always doing some amazing stuff over here. You guys should go check out Kyle's channel. Be like an NFT, be authentic. I like that. By the way, the art on this is pretty cool. Is this original art?
Yeah, that's original art. Actually, a quote unquote OMI homie did that. Kaki Gaijin. He's an actual community artist in the ecomi community, and he does a really great job. He's done a lot of art for a lot of the quote unquote OGs in the ecomi space. But yeah, thanks for the shout out there, and you kind of put me on the spot on the roadmap part, but I'm sure I would have 10 other things to list off, but you hit me on the spot on that one.
That's the way we got to do it, man. Because if it's on the top of your head, it usually means it's something big. Is when someone that really understands a project like VeVe. But anyway, Kyle, it's been great having you on the show so much. We appreciate you guys stopping in.
All right, thank you.
Excellent. All right, again, we're going to wrap it today. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in. But remember, getting into the Diamond Circle is a big part of being here on PBN. And the idea behind it is pretty simple. We drop a couple of emails a week. Those emails will have everything from reports. We'll probably have a VeVe guide coming soon to it. We've dropped some sandbox guides. We've done some stuff on Gala Games. And then we've also done a lot of AMAs, because we get a ton of just executive access, as you can imagine. We are dropping a big video this week with the Axie Infinity COO. So you don't want to miss that one. It's going to be a huge one. Of course, if you want to reach me, you can hit me up on Twitter. It's @Paul Barron out there. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.